Feels like we got a little turbulence.
Once you hit the ground, head straight to the designated convergence point. Got it?
Sorry I'm late.
It's time. Let's move out.
What about Cooper?
Forget him. Time's up.
Wait! Wait!
Welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are looking at another classic survival horror game that was released by Capcom in 1999, and that is Dino Crisis. If you're familiar with the Resident Evil series of games, you will instantly be familiar with Dino Crisis if you haven't played it already. And essentially it's a third person kind of action adventure game, but it also uses fixed camera angles to portray the action, so you can never really see what's actually going to be around each corner, so it adds to the whole element and the atmosphere and unique kind of concept of the game. So when this game was released, instead of actually having zombies and other types of monsters, you actually had dinosaurs instead, which was definitely a different type of concept, and to be honest it was actually quite unique, and it was actually executed really well, because the enemies, the dinosaurs, were very intelligent. You never knew what way they were going to react in the game and how they influenced their surroundings. But it was also the first of these type of games as well, these fixed camera angle games, to use full 3D graphics. They done away with the pre-rendered backgrounds like what they would use in the original Resident Evil titles, and instead they went for full 3D environments in this here game, and it actually was executed actually really well. It's actually a really good looking game, and graphically it's actually really good for its time. So my first experience with this here, I remember actually seeing it for the first time. It was actually my mate Derek had actually gotten a copy of it, but it was actually, he actually had an action replay card that you could utilise on likes of certain models of the PlayStation, but you could use certain hacks to allow you to play games from different regions, which was pretty awesome.
Still need to figure out
And there was certain places where you could actually get access to like certain markets and so forth, that you could get access to like different types of games, or games were being sold, like you could buy foreign region based games. And Dino Crisis had only really been released in Japan at that time. It hadn't been released in America and in Europe at that point. And we happened to go down to one of these places one of the days, and we actually happened to see this, and we were kind of like, oh, what's this? We didn't see anything like it before. We didn't even know that Dino Crisis even existed, because we hadn't even really seen much about it in magazines or anything like that at the time. And we're like, whoa, this looks really like Resident Evil, and just it looked awesome. So eventually we took it home, and Derek set it up on his PlayStation and started playing it. And I remember he actually took his PlayStation actually over to the house, because he was able to play these type of games on his computer at the time. And we sat in and we played it. Now the only thing is, it was all Japanese language, but we were obsessed with it. We were like, whoa, this game's actually cool, you know. But because we had played Resident Evil like 1 and 2 so much, we definitely had a good grasp or good comprehension of how to actually play the game, because it was similar in terms of what it offered. Again, the layouts were slightly a little bit different, but you kind of got the idea. And we actually played through the entire campaign. It took a couple of weeks now to actually finish it, because again, there were certain instances where, especially when you were doing certain puzzles, where you just didn't really figure things out. You had to kind of just trial and error, but we were persistent with it, and we actually did manage to finish the game, even with the Japanese game, and we had no idea of the language or nothing. But because, like I mentioned, we played the Resident Evil games that were similar to this for so long, a lot of the concepts and certain ideas and elements of the game were very, very similar. So we were able to figure things out as we were able to go. There was enough there to kind of give you a few breadcrumbs along the way to literally try and figure things out, which was awesome. But that added to the whole appeal for it. And that was, again, one of the cool things about going back to my favourite memories of the PlayStation. This here game was actually unique in that front, because of the fact that the first experience we had actually seen it was like literally the Japanese version. But it brought a whole different context to the way we actually played games, because we were actually able to play it, enjoy it and finish it in a game that we actually fully couldn't understand, because we couldn't read the subtitles, because it was in a different language. But we were clever enough to be able to figure out exactly what to do, because we played enough games that were similar to it to have some kind of comprehension or some kind of idea to figure out how to get from point A to point B and then so forth. And eventually we figured it out along the way. And honestly, I actually really enjoyed that experience myself, and my brothers and mates and that really enjoyed that experience, because again, it was taking something we had actually been playing and we were used to playing, and in a similar kind of style, but adding something different to it that was beyond what we were used to, like say with the language barrier, and being able to actually make it work and enjoy it just as much and actually get the most out of it was actually pretty incredible. So that was really awesome. The one consolation of the game was as well, even though the dialogue and the text was all in Japanese, the acting was still in, like say, normal English with the American style accents and stuff. So you did have some familiarity with what was going on, and at least you could understand that. And with everything that was going on, it did kind of give you some insight and some idea of how to approach certain situations in terms of puzzles and how to interact with certain elements in the environment. So you kind of knew right off what to do. But that's not to say that it wasn't a challenge in its own right, because the game is a challenge. Again, like there's a sequel that was brought out later, about a year later, Dino Crisis 2, and it does actually use pre-rendered backgrounds, but this was the first one of its kind of these type of games to use full 3D environments. And like I mentioned, it actually looks fantastic. It looks really well, and it plays really well. There's no slowdown, there's no kind of lag in terms of the graphics. The environments are really good, the gameplay is solid, the weapon choices are really good as well, and you can change out different types of weapons, like with your shotgun and stuff like that you could actually use, like even tranquilizer darts rather than actual bullets, and then you could get different styles of bullets as well that done more damage depending on the enemies that you were fighting as well. So it was really cool. There was so much to offer. And again too, it was one of the first type of games as well, that when a dinosaur damaged you, that it wouldn't just take health off you, you would also start bleeding. So you needed to use certain kind of medication to actually stop the bleeding before you could actually use a medikit to literally heal yourself, which was quite unique, and it was different concept for its time. I remember then later on, then a couple of months later after I played it, I remember actually going into one of the local CD stores in my local town, and I remember actually seeing it in there, and it was actually, because it'd been out a good few months, and I actually got it on a discount, and I got it for like £20 or Irish pounds at the time, and I was like, sweet, I am buying that. As soon as I seen it, I was like, yeah, just give me that straight away. So I didn't even hesitate, because even though I know that we had played the Japanese version, we had finished it, but there was still more to figure out and more to explore, because the game does have a few different endings depending on what you do, and different things do interact in different ways. So it was interesting to really see what was going on, and there was certain different types of environments and rooms that you couldn't get into. Depending on your choices, you get to go through different areas. So if you wanted, there was a lot of replayability in the game. So the chance of getting to actually own the proper European version or English version of the game was fantastic. So I was like, yeah, I bought it straight away. I didn't even hesitate, because I knew it was a good game, and I have to say I enjoyed it all over again. And being able to re-experience it properly with obviously all English language and dialogue and so forth, you could understand a lot more clearer what was going on. And again, you were able to unlock a lot of other stuff and actually get into areas that you probably didn't get into when you were playing the game first off, because you were able to understand better what was going on. But again, it just added to the experience. So that's what saying, going back to even like playing these type of games, I love all these type of style of games, all these pre-rendered or even the fixed camera background type games, because there's something really unique about them. Yes, they do feel kind of limited in terms of the controls and so forth, but that's what added so much to it, because they added so much kind of horror kind of element to it, because you were restricted. You didn't really know what was going to happen next. Like, especially if you were coming in as a newbie and actually playing this game for the first time, you really didn't know what to expect or where enemies were going to come from. And the fact that you can't see around the corner because where the camera angles are situated, it definitely left a lot of elements where you're kind of on edge as to, you could hear an enemy in the background but you couldn't tell exactly where in the room or area that they were actually in. So that completely added to the whole fear element of it as well, and that's what was awesome about these games. That's why I love the likes of Resident Evil, and this here was no exception. Right, this may not have had zombies, but it was executed just as well. You know, like, this game is highly praised, and I know that they're wanting to get this franchise remade, and I think Capcom actually has acknowledged that they do want to revisit this franchise, so I definitely do think that they should. So I don't know whether they'll do it in this original style with the fixed cameras, because they'll probably go a similar style what they've done with the Resident Evil games and do maybe over the shoulder. I wouldn't say to do first person. I'd imagine probably doing first person probably wouldn't suit this game, but definitely do like what they've done with the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, where over the shoulder would actually be a fantastic move. But even at that, to redo the game in its original style, like what they done with the Resident Evil 1 remake that was released on the GameCube in 2002 and later in 2015 on modern consoles with upgraded graphics, this here would be a fantastic choice to do that in that style as well if they could. And ideally, in my personal opinion, I would love for the game to be done in that style, because these old games really are the best in my opinion. I know like people may see it differently, but if you do love your old classic games and these style of games here, you'll definitely get where I'm coming from with this, because these games are awesome and they're still just as playable today as they've ever been. And I highly recommend that if you haven't played any of these type of games, whether it be Resident Evil or Dino Crisis, they're all as good as each other in my opinion. And Dino Crisis is definitely one of the best games, especially the first one. It's definitely one of the best games on the PlayStation, definitely one of the best horror type games. And the fact is that it uses dinosaurs instead of zombies and other monsters is definitely a cool choice, and it actually is executed really, really well. Especially when you go into environments, when you're going into areas and you have the big T-Rex coming after you, and that is just absolutely terrifying, because the size of that thing is just insane, and all you can do is just try to avoid it as best you can. It's absolutely incredible. And the fact is the graphics for the time were so well done. Like when you think of it, like for that type of era and that type of time, the graphics were incredible. They looked so realistic, even with the dinosaurs and the enemies and so forth. It was just absolutely insane. It really was. Like it was done so really well. So I highly recommend, I can't stress enough that if you haven't played Dino Crisis or any of these type of games, I highly recommend that you do so. You won't be disappointed, especially if you're willing to put up with the likes of the old school tank controls and just be patient with it and just try to understand it. You're definitely in for some really good experiences, because I know that these are definitely some of the best games I've ever played, and they're definitely my favourite, probably my favourite style of the games. And I love these type of style of games in that 32-bit era of the PlayStation. It's definitely my favourite style, for sure. It's the one that actually captured my imagination the most, if I'll be honest, when it came to these style of games. So again, definitely check it out if you haven't done so already, or if you have, definitely go and revisit it, because they're classics and they need to be played, for sure. So what are your thoughts on Dino Crisis? Have you actually played it? Did you manage to experience it back in the day? And if so, what did you think of it? Did you enjoy it? So if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel, as it does greatly help me with creating more videos and so forth, and gets more people to see more videos like this. And again, make sure to hit that bell icon as well, as it will notify you whenever I release future videos, as I will be revisiting old classic games like this here, and also playing other games I never got to experience back in the days on the PlayStation, and sharing my memories and thoughts and experiences with all of you. So as always, keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and make sure to keep those gaming memories alive.